have all of our files?
No,
We
Andy
have-
has none of your files.
I have the videos that they gave us.
Yeah.
I still want the morning update.
Alright.
The early.
Oh, he does? That's on video? Yes. Is everyone ready?
Yep.
Logan?
Yeah.
The United States federal government should significantly strengthen enforcement efforts to prevent gun trafficking across the U.S.-Mexican border. IPS first is the inherency one. We have no strengthening efforts right now. That's the plan. We have blame inherency crap. Thanks, Zach Cheetah. The United States federal government should pass Section 1 of the Democrats' conceptual proposal for immigration reform. The United States federal government should pass Section 1 of the Democrats' conceptual proposal for immigration reform. Okay, that's the end of solvency, so that answers your questions. Solvency 1 says Section 1 increases border enforcement in a few ways. One, it increases boots on the ground. Additionally, we have more border patrol, we have more ICE agents, and we have more fraud officers on the border. We just generally have more border customs inspectors. Number 2 is that this increases resources because we install ground sensors that have quick responses to border crossings and trafficking. Additionally, Border Patrol gets better communication equipment, uses the DoD equipment. They increase SUVs, helicopters, computers, drones, and remote surveillance systems. Does that answer your questions?
Copy and Megan has a question.
I have a question.
What's that?
Does the president sign this bill into law?
Yes, and he signs it in blood.
So, but
Security is the first advantage. It's going to be this is the cartel violence in China. One is that drug cartels are responsible for terrorist attacks and violence delays. That 140,000 people have been displaced because of cartel violence. It'll be that the National Human Rights Commission said that documented over 5,000 disappearances as a result of cartel violence. Number 2 is the Mexican forces are incapable of being able to combat cartels now. Delays that it takes multiple days in order for them to realize the violence had actually happened. A little bit that the LA Times says that there's a 1/8 desertion rate from the Mexican army means that their forces are down. 3 is that the U.S. is a key to is impending this. Is that 68,000 guns were traced back to the United States in the past 5 years initially, and 90% of the weapons used in violent crimes in Mexico come from the United States. The solvency here, one is this claims going to raise security delay. It makes the U.S. a dollar profit market for gun trafficking because we have more security, which means that it's cost heavy for moving because cartels now have to be a little bit more logistical and sneaky about the way in which they sneak across the border to begin with. And additionally, it cuts off weapon supplies because they're not able to secure their territory very well. So yeah, because they don't have any weapons to secure their territory, it means that they're decreasing in strength. Number 2 is this plan is going to create a focus on national security delays and natural disasters. Proves that a cascade, media attention costs a cascade of support for NGOs. Examples that when ethnic violence was taking place in China, NGOs rallied around in order to protect the ethnic minorities. Number 3 said increased cooperation with U.S.-Mexican government is always going to be able to solve back delays. That U.S. assistance is popular with Mexican people, and they want to have co-option in order to stop trafficking from happening as well. It'll be that the Mexican president says he wants to increase cooperation with the United States. We'll see that the Mexican rally point is key because, this is going to cause an internal rallying point, which means it's not going to be as much desertion rate, and the army means that they're able to combat internally and within Mexico. Number 4 is the IC is effective because the number of people across the border has decreased in 50% in the past few years. Additionally, is that all they need is resources in order to be able to do their job well. The impacts here, one is that cartel violence is bad. Who would have thought? At least a dehumanization because people are killed on a daily basis. They literally live in a state of fear. I don't know if you were at the Western Party last night, but this is basically a world in which the police are constantly around us and putting you in a state of fear. It makes Madeline cry. Additionally, is that you have absolutely no agency. Yeah, she cried. You have absolutely no agency to literally move because people are too afraid to use the highways, and propagation stuff. You should always prefer systemic impacts on the basis of probability for a few reasons. First of all, because it's more rural, cartel violence and rape are cyclical and systemic effects, in fact, and traumatized, may last forever. 2 is that epistemologically featured from the self-identity effects way in which we see the world. Systemic impacts are pervasive because they remain for plenty of society. Their magnitude is constantly marginalized by the inability to act. We can't know the true magnitude of this, so you should project the irrational probable impacts on face because they're never, they allow us to never take action. The second effect is going to be terrorism. Cartels bombed oil pipelines in 2010. Probably reasons why they're going to destabilize the economy if you can't have oil in the long run. But most importantly, the DOI said that the Mexican border is most likely place for a WMD and a counter-terror agency. All authenticated a video by Al Qaeda saying that they are going to smuggle in a weapon sometime this year across the border, or a chemical biological weapon. This is going to be bad because, first of all, 4-pound bag of anthrax can kill over 10,000 people in just a couple of hours. Not to mention how that's going to be spreading across. Additionally, this is going to lead to conventional wars because the U.S. is going to have to go through and basically contain the threat that they see, and this has potential to lead to nuclear war in the air because retaliation and accidents go to extinction. Advantage 2 is human trafficking, unless you want anything else. Ace points unique is that the human trafficking is running rampant now. One is that the State Department said there are 20,000 people trafficked in the U.S. Additionally, and that this doesn't reflect actually how many people are there because of low reporting rate. Number two is that kidnappers get people trying to enter the U.S. In 2008 to 2009, 98% of the people who were kidnapped were on railways, and 59% of the kidnappers were done by coyotes, which means they're facilitating illegal immigration. The biggest thing that's key to all of this is being able to have the weapons necessary to coerce people into trafficking to begin with, because if someone's pointing a gun to your head and says, come in this band and become a sex worker for me, it's pretty hard to say no, unless you want to die. Number three is that the human trafficking is profitable because the Heritage Foundation said 2009 human trafficking netted over $5 million a year, and additionally is that the sheer number of people crossing means that you, traffickers, can get a lot of people, which means there's a low risk and a high reward. The solvency here said one plan increase port security, which means that we're able to bifurcate the way that trackers work, because they also spend money in order to move drugs. Means that they are going to be switching to trafficking drugs instead of people, because it's it's not as big of a penalty as trafficking people. Additionally, so the plan's going to scare traffickers. Yeah, okay, I already said that. Number two is the plan encourages reporting because they feel the U.S. is actually on their side and that they can actually talk about because they have support. Number three is that trafficking is lower because you can't have coercion into violence with guns, means that we are directly talking back to this. Number four is that the plan increases NGO focus because Amnesty International is super down with conservative with human trafficking. Additionally, impacts. First of all, this leads to disposable populations. This is literally slavery, where people are sold to be sex workers or even to be human laborers. Means that this is uniquely dehumanizing everyone, except by you need to be able to system that this is also the internally to all atrocities, because we're which we can just toss populations off the side. Means that they are always going to be seen as not worthy of any sort of protection. The second impact is going to be disease spread. The super optimist said that when once one person is engulfed in sex trade, that means that they are made to service over 30 men a day. That means they have a higher likelihood of rejecting HIV and AIDS, and they're 10 times more likely to have that happen. This has potential to mutate because syphilis proves that high infection rates means that we have mutation. This means that we have potential for airborne AIDS in a world in which this is mutated. And everyone will die.
Okay. The order is 1, 2. Do you want me to call this a separate sheet? Yeah, I would. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the one I see.
With solvency?
The solvency will be
On the extra sheet of paper?
yeah. No, solvency will be on the advantage.
On the advantage, so I don't need this.
You don't need that piece of paper. You don't need that piece of paper.
So sorry, 4 and 1.
1, 2, 3, 4, and then the one I see in order. Without the salt. Yeah, I have too many papers here.
I can find mine says.
Once it's set up for 10 minutes.
You.
Okay. Are you ready? AP interpretation, strengthen means innovate off of existing legislation. Again, strengthen means innovate off of existing legislation. The violation is that they implement a new law standards versus ground. We lose the ability to have alternative counter plans, which means that the only thing that we get was the only thing we prepped was comprehensive proposal, conceptual proposal and immigration reform, and the affirmative gets unlimited ground, which shows clash depth of education. They clash the internally to education. This is internally to fairness because we don't have access to the same on the ground. Then they come on the ground with 20 minutes of prep. We only get 7 minutes off on 1 AC, which indicates there is an enormous prep skew, next predictability, new policies or not, and the literature base so they're impossible to predict in prep time. Prep skew turns an abstract favor the skills fairness that is articulated above. Also, there's topic education about current policies that we are using. This means that education is key because it is harder to pass new policies than to enforce an alternatives. More ethically responsible is the education within the art of the topic literature, also effectually topical. Your sex trafficking advantage is not a direct result of gun enforcement, voter on tweeting interpretation best, or because it decreases judge intervention, which voter for reasons, fairness, and education articulated above. Next text.
Extra T or
FXT. Okay. The United States Congress should draft and pass Section 1 of the Democrats' conceptual proposal for immigration reform. The President, upon receiving the legislation, should return the legislation to the Congress with no executive signature. Upon receiving the unsigned bill, the Congress should override the executive veto through normal means. Again, the U.S. Congress should draft and pass Section 1 of the Democrats' conceptual proposal for immigration reform. The President, upon receiving the legislation, should return the legislation to Congress with no executive signature. Upon receiving the unsigned bill from Congress, the Congress should override the executive veto through normal means. Copy questions?
So
Yeah.
Cheeto.
So
competition. First, we're contextual. We send to POI that the president signs, and you cannot sign it unsigned, especially if you sign it in blood next to sexual competition. We took out the catch-all phrase of the USFG as the actor, and sexual competition is academically very different to contrive debatable to eliminate functionally competitive arguments. However, functional competition and competitive conflicts at the core of the educational value, the logic game of debate with opportunity cost, and it solves. The conflicts also 100% of your because it results from the same action of the act. You don't have a warrant for why the president must sign, and any presidential perception based on the advantages will prove our links to the politics and be cross-applied to the party, and the candidate doesn't link to politics. The president aligns with himself with the enemy in the Republican Party, and the president will gain additional capital because it creates a lightning rod which draws in attention next net benefit.
Status.
Conditional.
Wait, unconditional or conditional?
Uniqueness first argument is the separation of power otherwise is undermining the status quo, and the courts are overstepping their rule and infringing on presidential power. Presidential powers are being restricted. The federal court ruled on Friday that the presidential recess of weapons were not constitutional. This is the largest single reduction of presidential power in one court case in history. The latest is that the Canada plan solves this because as the president increases power over Congress through the use of a veto, this establishes his role in the separation of power. This is especially important because the call for immigration reform and for gun reform in the status quo, gun policy reform in the status quo internally is the preservation of democracy. It's important to use the government to use separation of power so that the powers of government are balanced, and politics is an oral tradition. We have to do this in order to have a public perception of increased process being used. The impacts is first tyranny. In a world that only has one branch of power, you can get a stronghold on policy and implementation of laws without a public consensus. This causes ideological extremist policies like cutting social services and restricting civil rights. This issue of structural violence internally linked towards their first advantage, and second advantage because a mass structural violence solvency. You are incapable of solving things like sex trafficking and displacement of individuals. You are incapable of solving the issues that you seek to articulate when you restrict the ability to make policies on them in the future. More people also is cascading impact of the population will become disillusioned and disengaged, which will fall out of the political realm. This turns the case and causes a decline in the economy, which is spirit murder, where all individuals don't believe that they don't have intrinsic worth. This is worse. This is worse than death because it allows all violence to be justified, and we can't evaluate death until we know what life means. Next. First argument is that Hegel confirmation is coming in the status quo. Democratic support by Senate Majority Leader Reid, the Armed Service Chair Levin, proves this. Also, Schumer and Boxer expressed public support last week, which means that there's unification of some Republicans and some Democrats, but some Democrats and independents like King are on the fence. Republicans are still feeling pressure to compromise, but don't want to appear obstructionist. McCain said last week that he would not back Hagen, and two Republicans don't feel the same past responsibility, so they don't feel the need to compromise. And Hope is trying to block Hegel and is gaining public support and finance from conservative groups. The links is that anti-gun control legislation angers the GOP, causes them to rally against Obama last summer. A piece of legislation to require Republicans to require reporting of purchasing 10 or more assault weapons cause enormous amounts of backlash in local authority, or is perceived as immigration reform. Republicans are also against immigration reform because it's perceived as a xenophobic understanding of other people coming into our country and taking our jobs. Additionally, we think there's a large amount of ideological alignment, not only to keep immigrants from coming into the country, but also to support of the Second Amendment, which means that it's perceived as either gun control or immigration reform. Either way, the GOP doesn't like it internally, since the GOP backlashes on the nomination because it is one of the few things to take backlash on without enormous decrease in public support. And Carter, with Obama's second nomination, he said that he was staying on the Secretary of Defense and GOP, and the Pentagon have asked for him because he's strong military strength. The impacts versus the Asian Pacific. Carter supports moving in with military focus from the Middle East to Asia in order to counterbalance China regional power and make F-35 sales to Taiwan. This would cause backlash and disappointment because China will perceive this as encircling and now is key because the electoral cycles have lined up, which only happens once in a decade, and China will lash out on Taiwan after the F-35 sales because they are much better weapon than the F-16s that they have right now. This power over regional control brings in the U.S. because of security agreements and alliances with Taiwan. This war escalates and goes nuclear because China will see it as an existential threat because Taiwan is tied to their national identity. Nuclear war causes extinction because dust clouds out the sun and stops photosynthesis, makes all life impossible. Next scenario is Japan, the U.S. No, okay, case. There's enormous amounts of structural violence in a world where you are blown up in a nuclear disaster. Case. Okay. First argument. Okay. First argument is you're incapable of solving. Your crackdown creates more explosion in purchases of power. This is empirically proven right now. Gun sales have gone up 200% because of perception of legislation coming. Also, you probably just changed the geography of where the guns are actually coming from. We rooted out the problem in Colombia, which caused a move of gun trafficking come through Mexico, which and as perception of gun legislation is coming now, this transfer is just moving Klan Party. The new president supports the cartels enormously, gives them tons of money, which means that all your impacts become absolutely inevitable. Also, black markets prove that your impacts inevitable. Also, porous borders prove England and DC are good examples of gun regulations failing empirically. Advantage 2.
What were those examples?
DC and England. Only passing one section of a bill prevents further immigration reforms. It signals that compromise has already happened, which means that people will perceive immigration legislation as not coming as the only resort that individuals have to, in order to come into the country, will be through counter resistance works because you do not qualify for a visa when you voluntarily come in. If they can prove that you came in through Coyote voluntarily, then you are incapable of getting a U or T visa in the current way that the TPVA is structured. Additionally, structured as sex trafficking, people are not prosecuted. Only less than 1% are actually prosecuted, which means that you are incapable of solving the root cause of the problem because you don't get out the people who are in charge of the business. Also, not all sex trafficked people are sex slaves. Also, not all sex workers are women. Additionally, we think that
The process is incredibly victimizing to
Yes.
people who are trafficked.
the process is incredibly victimizing to people who are trafficked internally linked towards your structure violence policy.
Orders T case, and then let me find it. Where's my T show? Yeah, so T and then case, and then the paper where they cheat, and then the network cheating, and then the
Is that what you meant to say?
You meant the paper where we went in the debate.
I think you misspoke.
All right. First argument, we do strengthen, we do innovate existing legislation. The conceptual proposals are being proposed in Congress, which means it's so hard for strengthening it, i.e. putting it into law. We are strengthening existing legislation. Second argument is counter-interpretation to strengthen these to innovate or expand existing laws or regulations, i.e. existing border control devices. Or the counter-interpretation strengthen means to expand current efforts to stop gun violence on the border and gun trafficking on the border. We're doing this by passing a bill that they can see the solvency indicating we're increasing the amount of security on the border, which means we'll fall back to this interpretation. Second, on use after amortization, absolute key to check back against cheater counterplans like Veto Cheeto and the ability for negative run generic strategies, especially on a top and non-top tournament. We need to have the ability to check back against these check back against these. Additionally, the next one is best application because we actually talk about a piece of legislation that has been put on the table, which means we can talk about real-world education as well. But additionally, it's not a ground in a world where we just have to strengthen current legislation. That we could literally strengthen anything by any amount, which would be infinitely aggressive because we could strengthen any piece of legislation, and we wouldn't have to do it significantly, which means there's no ability for you to have any sort of ground. But additionally, we're not generating any offense off of non-topical solvency, which means there's no proof of use. We are generating offense off the fact that there are going to be less guns traversing the border and perhaps a spillover of focused integration there, which means that we would be able to generate the same length in a world of your interpretation, which means there is no proof of use here. But additionally, it's absolutely critical for it's absolutely critical for us to gain access to specifically talking about this bill, which is key. But additionally, it's predictable because we have this top area at the Northwest Warm-Up, which indicates that this is probably in your back class to do the research for the tournament. But additionally, it's also the reason why we're able to fall back for all the predictability in your literature-based standards. Not true because we're in literature-based. But additionally, we are not an unpredictable new policy option, which means there's no abuse here. But additionally, we are absolutely critical to the education data in terms of real-world, additionally, fictional topicalities and output, because you can literally do the plan. You can't generate any advantages off the plan action, which means all advantages are going to be affect topical, and somehow because you do have to keep the resolution, then that generates a sort of impact. But additionally, there's no ambiguity and there's no abuse on effects topicality. Additionally, we are not generating the offense or skewing them out of any ground, which means there's no ability, and the ability to limit victim procedural trace at the bottom means there's no ability to interrogate real-world debate or the top specific education. This means that whenever you have GC or data proof use, they're not going to do so on the next paper. On advantage, one day they say structural violence is an when you get one of our arguments, it indicates that in a world where we have no ability to understand how bad structural violence is, it always will outweigh being blown up. But additionally, they're conceding that the rhetoric of blowing it distracts us from passing these things in the first place, which means you should probably vote for this probable impact being able to solve back for sex trafficking, rape, which is probable and happening right now, before you try and solve back for a nuclear war, which has never fucking happened. But additionally, the next argument you say crackdown creates more buying our analysis indicates that in a world where we're able to make the border more secure, there's less of an ability for people transfer the border, extend the entire community spared that cartel violence is increasing now. 500,000 people disappeared over the course of the last couple of years. And in fact, we are unable to combat them because even the Mexican army is deserting and stuff like that because the cartels are able to get a bunch of guns. You say that the increased amount of gun sales are analysis is indicative of the status quo in a world where gun sales are increasing now with no ability to rein in the amount of traffic going over the borders. After critical that we do so in order to solve back for cartel violence. Additionally, say increased gun trafficking elsewhere. Our analysis indicates that we are international spiller, which means people imitate our policy, which means we're able to solve back and increase the protections against gun traffic in places like Nicaragua, which model us is proven by our intervention in the recent Cuba. Additionally, they say it's always worse than Honduras. No analysis is why this is true. We will in the argument that this sort of trafficking is ongoing in the status quo, which means there's only risks that are still over arguments are able to solve back. And you say the Mexican president Peña supports the cartels. He supports trying to get rid of them in terms of their violent actions in a world where they don't have guns anymore. That's always going to be a positive thing. He supports them in terms of their micro positive actions, but not in terms of the rape that we were talking about, which means we're always overcoming. But additionally, they conceded that the president asked for it, and the population likes claim, which means only risk of being able to fall back. You say you've seen the proof failure. Our analysis not to gun bans for transferring guns over the border. They conceded that bunch of left are going to the border from the United States, which means the only risk of fall back. And the argument that causes collapse of border collapse, economic cause nuclear extinction. This is a bigger impact, will probably impact than any impact going to be generating off the veto to counterplan. But additionally, the institutes and the United States arguments that they perceive this coming, which means there's no future reform. Our arguments that there's going to be still in the world where focus on border security that pushes it for future immigration legislation through that increases the perception that future legislation will come through. They have no analysis of why the perception is going to be actually bad for legislation, only why it's going to be bad for people coming over the border and prosecution laws, which means that in the world where it's perceived that spillover is occurring, that means it's already riskier. But additionally, they say no prosecution because there are other things that are the root cause. Our analysis indicates that every instance is against to prevent rape and prevent the kind of sex trafficking that is going on. We agree with your analysis that not all sex workers are slaves and not all people who are sex traffickers are women. We're trying to stop all sorts of this injustice that makes people do something that they don't want to do, and it's sort of violence, which means that we are able to fall back. You say the process of victimizing. Our analysis indicates that it's probably victimizing to get raped. Which means there's only risk people are going to be less raped, or less people are going to be raped after a plan, which means we're able to solve back mutually. This argument additionally extends to population to internally to humanization. Additionally, extend the argument that structural violence comes first on to the first argument is the theory for today's interpretation that it's not justified to veto to account plan D, and it's not justified to veto to account plan D's violation. They have a veto to account plan I, they get the president to veto something, and then they get the Congress to overrule the next argument that it's cheating because it seals the entirety of the Afghan movement. PMC no ability for us to be the G becomes bifurcated in a world where the reading conditionality, which means that there's even more risk for abuse to happen, which means that in a world where they kick it is probably the reason why you should still reject them on account plan. Additionally, the next argument is that there's no ability for us to talk about real education because nothing is ever vetoed and cheated, or it doesn't happen that often, which means it's not specifically important to the literature base within immigration. Additionally, they're talking about how Congress passes, which means we are absolutely critical. Additionally, there's no reason why the nation should get to advocate the background and just kick us out on some procedural reform. Procedural reform is exactly what covered up the structural violence in the first place, which means that this count plan is not able to solve anything. Rather, just turns us into machines that count bodies like dollars. But additionally, it's absolutely because there's no ability for us to actually engage within a parametricized debate in a world where they're just talking about processes. We don't get to engage in hospital education, evaluate on competing traditions, political intervention means the 2000 state is absolutely critical on affirmative theory because the kind of seals the entire affirmative, which means we are justified on this. They don't have to be proven use on top count, which means there's no ability for you to overrule the reasonability standard there on account now for targeting permutation. But this is totally possible in your terms because it's not a question of doing plan and doing not plan. It's a question between doing plan and doing not plan, which means we are able to solve back and the justice position creates a ontological fluidity which allows us to interrogate multiple things and serves as a jumping point for further interrogation of immigration reform, which means we have discourse solved between the real world and since we have a solution, this is the reason why you should always evaluate a permutation way to fall back and a source of evaluating it from this discourse to evaluate whether it's absolutely critical because it's reality and the next argument you say cannot sign on important and the next argument you say the United States don't give a facts not text on our and you say the count plan these are all not important, but you said count plan solved because the same action there is no momentum in the world where the president is able to overrule because it jacks the ability for this bill legislation to that it is super popular like it is in the status quo, which means there's no ability for you to generate any unique offense. But additionally, the count plan doesn't let you say bomb capital. I know risk bomb capital is absolutely critical to push through president's power. First argument, president's powers are terminally effective. No ability for the president's powers to be of any importance in a world where because they've shown that the Obama administration thought we were going to be able to push things. There's no impact security level the ability for the people to be screen raped by the cartels means that we need to be able to solve back to this first. But additionally, say internally, turn bench 1 and advantage 2, there's no ability for you to be able to solve back for any of your impacts security in a world where we allow the cartels to maintain tyranny in the Mexican government, which means there's only risk we're able to saw back into the political reform, we're able to saw back on the politics to that first argument that ceiling comes through, and the gun control debate comes first, because there's no ability for this effect. But additionally, the next argument is perceived as if you argue about why it's not going to be perceived and why people are not going to actually move through truth, and that means that there's no ability for it to actually cause the GOP to go upset. Additionally, it linked from the world where it has to plan we're actually a piece of GOP because it makes them more happy about this, but it makes them happy about it makes them happy because they love border security. They love putting people on the border and minimum. But the next argument is that there's no risk of it. There's no risk of conflict. There's been 30 years of dialogue with Taiwan, never caused nuclear war, and economic ties.
The order is going to be topicality. Then it is going to be the counterpoint. Then it is going to be the net benefit, the tyranny.
Where are you putting the counterpoint theory?
At the top where he put it. I still need your interpretation.
You don't get a veto Cheeto counterpoint.
Oh, cool. Okay. Sorry, did I finish the order? And then the app, and then politics, and then the app.
Politics and then app.
Yeah.
Okay.
First, topicality, cross the veto. Topicality never comes about a diverse voting issue because we should always be able to justify understand what the plan does because it allows us to generate ground within the debate, run no RBI, no ability to generate offense. Cross-party convenient interpretations is also going to apply to the theory flow on the other sheet of paper. Fire plan? First is the counter-interpretation in instances of. Wait, 1 second, Katie. What's the topic?
The topic is should significantly.
In instances where there is no direct literature-based result relating to the topic, in which case there are in cases where there are more than 5 possible affirmative cases, the negative team should get the ability to veto the 1AC and then pass it through. Does anyone need that again?
Yeah.
If there are more than 5 possible topical affirmative cases, the negative team should get the ability to veto and then pass. First argument would be this interpretation. We say it strengthens existing policies and there are other conceptual proposals or frameworks to reform means that they're only passing one step. It means that there's multiple steps that they could pass. In addition, there are multiple types of ways that they could multiple types of ways that they can move forward and enforce or expand cross-level counter-interpretation from topicality that says that they simply have to expand or enforce something. And there's many different topical affirmatives. Okay, on the standard level of debate. On the standard level of debate, they're only going to begin there. They make a lot of arguments on this level of debate. They're only getting 2 main arguments. The first one is that we steal the entirety of the Afghan. The second one is real education. We'll get to those right now. The first, they say they steal Afghan at least empty ratification. The first argument is that we don't steal Afghan. You should have to spend the entirety of the 1AC. For 2 reasons. The first reason is because if you don't spend the entirety of the 1AC, then you get to decide what you pick out of what you are going to defend. This makes it completely impossible in order to generate LSC strategies because you can simply decide that whatever week you're going to spike out of. This is always going to be worse because it decreases worse the negative team's reading the veto counterplans because it decreases clash within the debate round because at that point we can't totally have the ability to generate any new arguments and you get the last speech. In addition, we articulate that this is going to be uniquely best for education. We say that education by the political process is uniquely key in order to is uniquely key to understand how we as individuals participate in democracy and how the political system influences. This is key to check back for tyranny, which is the impact to the net benefit because it allows us to understand when the government is abusing its power. In addition, this leads to better policy education on depth issues. The next argument is that the energy bifurcation. This is a unique reason for veto counterplans. We can bifurcate you by reading multiple conditional strategies or by reading 1,000 topicality violations. And one of these is not a unique reason to reject the team. Next, is the rule in education because this never happens. Look, that's our argument on the net benefit that says that this does happen and things do get vetoed. However, right now it doesn't happen within the test code. We say this is important for us to increase this ability to happen within the test code so we can understand how this functions within the other branches of the government, such as the court's decision that they made about not having recess appointments within the world test code. Furthermore, we articulate the depth is internal to education, which means that we're picking one issue for presidential powers and going very deep into the debate. This is always going to be the best way to focus the debate around because it allows us to get the most words out and it allows us to have the most depth and warranted argumentation on this issue. Depth of education is going to be uniquely key. We talk about a lot of different things, so long as you're looking at warrant, there's no real education that's going to be able to happen. No one's going to try to side on your program. Next, you say the negative not get affirmative ground. Apply that the affirmative the point of check. We asked you in the want to see if the point of if the president signed the bill, you said yes. You guys have to use within the resolution, which means you expect the entirety. You accept you passing the plan. That's all 3 branches having the president veto. This means that we're not depending on affirmative ground. This is distinctly never ground because it's not a topical 1AC. The next argument you make is the parameter is the cross-line topic education, depth is the internal link. This is the way that these policies get, this is the way that these policies get enforced, which means this is the way that we have to look at it. We have to look at it. You say that we decrease judgment, you say that this is cause of judgment mention. This isn't true. We give you interpretation, and two interpretations weigh against each other. This is no different than weighing two types of frameworks, or weighing a counter plan and a plan. We say that whichever interpretation is most net beneficial is going to be capable of falling back. Next, onto our offense. The first argument is limits. We articulate that the depth is key to education, which means that when there are more possible affirmative cases, more than 5 possible affirmative cases, means the negative is never capable of accessing private ground, which means the only thing we have the ability to read is generic arguments. This is there's no decrease in education because the topic is anti-educational within the workforce. In addition, this means that this is going to incentivize teams to not to be topical and to allow for education to happen because they overlimit the topic. It means that there's something going to get rolled in the theory debate. Next on the permutation, you said permutation solves the juxtaposition. This is a critique debate. We say that this will destroy the political process because you can't have both a veto and a non-veto at the same time. This causes confusion and causes a decrease in democracy, which triggers the impact to the net benefit, which triggers the impact to the net benefit of tyranny and decrease in autonomy and ability to participate in reality. You say that the case is reality. I'm not really sure what this means. What is this argument? Discourse doesn't take reality. Discourse doesn't take reality. The way in which policies are implemented decides what's going to happen. We only have the ability in this round to look at real and concrete efforts. We have the ability, and we have the moral obligation to look at consequentialism because this determines who is actively affected by our policies. This includes issues such as trafficking, but doesn't include issues such as the juxtaposition permutation. That you're claiming no framework in today round means you're not able to go for this. Furthermore, you make it solve argument. This is no momentum. This isn't true. It makes a solid argument. The bottom of the page is that the president's capable of gaining power. That the president's capable of gaining capital because there's increased news coverage on him and increase in public perception because it looks like Obama is standing up for what he believes in. This increase in Obama capital means that within the future he gets the ability to compromise with Republicans on immigration issues because he's already compromised with them before. In addition, it means that he has public perception is capable of influencing policies. You say Obama capital and not the President Fowler's first line that it is key. That this is key. We make the argument on the bottom of the net benefit that says that this is an oral tradition, which means that Obama is uniquely key in order to be able to stop this because we have to be able to pass on the tradition of being able to veto things. It's a wonderful, wonderful tradition. Going to net benefit. Look, the only argument you make here that there's no impact because rape protests are still going to happen. I think 2 arguments. First argument, this is not an debate, right?
It's not a debate.
Yeah. Okay, net benefits. I have 2 arguments in response. The first argument is that within a world of tyranny, this becomes inevitable because people like acting think something legitimate rape occurred. People like the GOP think that women are capable of voting because they're simply too emotional, which means that in a world where only one race has the ability to take power, they're always going to be able to make laws that don't protect individuals from instances of rape, from instances of sexual assault, or from instances of drug trafficking because we're too concerned about people being brown that they're coming across the border that we don't care about the fact and the conditions that we're put into that. This is the Katie's argument on that second advantage. It talks about how trafficking works and how the prosecution system for that works right now is uniquely bad. We see them capable of returning this, but only when individuals have the ability to vote within individuals to vote. Furthermore, I'm going to cross-apply the cascading autonomy that when people don't feel like they have a political voice, it means they don't have any incentive to participate in democracy. It's called a fear of murder, which means people want people to advocate for themselves. Lack of autonomy is an internal link to all of your impacts on the case debate because without lack of autonomy, people don't have the ability to advocate for themselves, which means that they can be harmed without consequence. It also means that this is dehumanization, structural violence, become inevitable, which you isolate as the biggest difference on case debate, taking a specific example of social issues, of social services and rights abuses that are happening in instances of structural violence. This is independently going to be able to outweigh any solvency deficit they have in the counter plan. Politics. Okay. First argument on politics. Cross-apply argument. This is the Democrats are that says that I want to cross-apply the argument. This is no conflict ever going to happen. This is what Logan gets out in the last 1 minute. No conflict happens with Taiwan. Means no impact, no propensity for them to get any link offense off of this.
Also, probably means that there's not an escalation to a war scenario.
Yeah. Also means that non-escalation to the war scenario in the 1AC, mutually assured destruction on the Taiwan scenario. Furthermore, proves that there's no escalation part of the 1AC. I guess I'm going to give an underview now. Look, underview of the debate round, you're going to be giving 26-5 to the win for Oregon because Vito Cheeto's capable of solving the entirety of the act, and we have a linear net benefit that's capable of outweighing any solvency deficit that happens with 1AC. They specifically isolate in every speech they have given that structural violence issues are the most important thing within the debate round. Well, that's fine because tyranny has the biggest internal link to structural violence because we have a lack of autonomy, which means that all of the 1AC impacts become inevitable. No answer on this piece of paper. Furthermore, we're capable of solving the impacts of the 1AC. We're solving sex trafficking.
Counterplan, net benefit.
veto may be a gross argument to vote on, but I don't think that you need to give us 26.5. I think that we could probably get more than that. Okay. Counterplan solves 100% of the AFD solvency deficit. The AFD solvency deficit is independently outweighed by the net benefit. I only want one argument on the counterplan theory. It proves why this instance is absolutely necessary for policy process education. The MO number 6 says the policy process education is uniquely key because it's necessary to see how tyranny highlight instances of tyranny. We think that this sort of education is especially necessary in this specific type of debate because we can see how the government abuses power and allows corruption to happen. This makes possible your trafficking advantage. Corruption is only possible in a world where we don't encounter governmental abuse. Only trafficking this type of education that we get to a process-based counterplan where we are able to evaluate when the government is taking advantage of certain rights and when power is skewed. This is the type of power imbalance that creates corruption and allows for issues of trafficking to occur. This allows for cartel takeover to occur, which makes the advantages of your 1AC possible. We say that this type of spotlighting and highlighting of issues of corruption is literally the internal link to being able to solve things like your 1AC. This is why a process counterplan is necessary in this instance. This is an education net benefit that independently outweighs any argument that they could go for on why process counterplans are bad, because it is a specific link to why counterplans are necessary to highlight an issue that their 1AC seeks to resolve, which means that it is a key internal link to this round's education, which we only get access to one time. Additionally, there's an enormous solvency deficit with the permutation. First argument is we think that I don't even understand how this is politically possible. This type of permutation robs the discussion that we were having of all of its educational value. Because we're talking about how the government is capable of allocating power. And when you say that this type of vetoing and also not vetoing is possible, that is a misunderstanding of governmental power that justifies and makes this debate important. We need to have debates like this so that we can point out, oh, it is not okay and it is not politically or legally legitimate to be able to veto and also not veto. That is a reason to reject the permutation. Additionally, that is an enormous solvency deficit to the 1AC versus the counterplan. They don't give a warrant for why presidential signature is absolutely necessary. Additionally, public perception would only swing in the way that says that Obama is capable of influencing policies in a much stronger way than he was before. Additionally, we say that passing on the oral tradition of politics and the tradition of the veto is a unique benefit for the political process. It's the internal link to the strength of our net benefit, which goes conceded. 30 seconds on the net benefit is absolutely insufficient coming out of the MG. We think that the dissent independently outweighs the insolvency deficit that can happen to the counterplan. We need to be able to make laws to be able to protect people. When we are too concerned about immigrants, we are incapable of talking about how the process is broken. We think that we are winning a strong internal link to tyranny, that you concede arguments about how social services are being cut, that civil rights are being restricted because we have an inequity and an imbalance in power. This internally linked turns your app because we say that a lack of autonomy and a lack of political voice, a lack of being able to compete, being able to have your voice heard in a democracy makes it impossible for you to be able to stand up against issues of structural violence. We say that structural violence becomes absolutely inevitable because you endorse it on a governmental level when you do not break up a separation of powers. Only the counterplan is capable of resolving this by breaking up and separating powers. You make dehumanization and structural violence inevitable, which means that the probability of your app exponentially increases in a world where you do the app, because trafficking only continues to exist. Corruption in government, corruption at the level of the officials who control our policies only continues to exist on a much higher degree with greater magnitude and greater probability when you don't actively make power divisions possible.
The theory. Surprise! Yay! I'm sorry, Adam. They started it.
We are going to be
winning on topicality because all of their education claims are just bullshit. In a world in which A, I have to go for this theory still to begin with, and B, they don't even talk about anything in terms of immigration and the net benefit of the counterplan, probably is the reason why they are not getting any access to topical education. And if they're saying that education is the key internal link, specifically depth of education is the key internal link to everything, and that's why they get their counterplan, and they're probably false, but we're not even talking about the topic within the functions of their counterplan and their net benefit. Additionally, if we, that is also showing us to why fairness is the most important standard in today's debate and the most important voting issue, because if we don't have fairness, then we can't have education, because we're stuck talking about theory instead of actually talking about the topic as a whole. It means that if they read a counterplan that was not cheating and was fair, and we had a fair debate round, then we could actually get access to the education that they are claiming to supposedly have. Anything else? Okay, we're going to start at the top. Their counter-interpretation is bad for a few reasons. First of all, we have there's no ability to tell when we will have more than five topical affirmatives, which means that they have absolutely no bright line for their interpretation. Like, this could change depending upon whatever topic it is, means that they're probably not getting access to the only piece of offense they can read, which is limits. In a world in which we are always we never know exactly what more than 5 means or anything like that, then there's their counter-interpretation basically sucks. Additionally, our interpretation is always going to be better because we ensure direct bright line, which is you cannot have a veto-cheato counterplan. It means that you are always going to be limited in this debate round. Meg never says why over-limiting is bad in this instance. Means that we are always going to be the best interpretation for both education and fairness. Additionally, yeah. Yeah, I was about to get there. Yeah, that was my next word. It's okay. They're also conceding that we are the most predictable plan because this was a Northwest warm-ups topic. You can cross-pilot the TFL. Means that they're not going to get any sort of access to how they had to read this because we were unpredictable. Because that is just bullshit. On the we meet,
they don't read the 5 possible.
Yeah, they also don't read the 5 possible aptitudes that they're not ever going to be meeting, nor are they telling us what our limits are going to be. Additionally, you say that we need to be able to expand on this top. Okay. Also, any sort of fact that you're saying that the affirmative is going to be extra T or is bad for a ground because we're unpredictable means that extra T and topicality are always going to be able to check back this. You don't need to read a veto-cheato counterplan. There's other theory positions that you read in this debate round that you could have gone for and not gone for the counterplan. With that, you can set across the first standard respect. You steal affirmative ground. Megan's answers are laughable. They say that we need to defend all of the plan, but in this particular instance, look. Even if we have to defend all the plan, we are defending all the plan. Our argument here is that it is bad to read this type of counterplan because it is bad for education when we can't even talk about the exact topic, especially when their counterplan and their net benefit are not even contextualized in terms of the topic. The only way that they are contextualized is the counterplan text says the plan text. Probably reason as to why they are stealing all the affirmative ground. This is bad for a few reasons. First of all, we're not able to have a debate because we're forced to debate against ourselves. Secondly, it kills Logan's MG speech because he has to bifurcate his time. Basically, the MG ground becomes a contrived solve suggested to the counterplan or return to the net benefit, which is always going to be bad because, literally, it moots the entirety of the PMC. That is really bad for fairness and education because we are basically ignoring the first speech debate, which means that we are not going to get access to any sort of real-world education or topic-specific education in this particular debate. Additionally, is that you inflate a stupid net benefit, which means that you're completely stealing our ground. They could have read the net benefit in itself and saying that presidential powers are bad now, and the plan is a particular bad instance of presidential powers. They didn't need the counterplan in order to be able to get this offense. Means that the disad's always going to be able to answer back these arguments to begin with. You can also extend across the number 3, which is that we're not able to talk about real-world education. Megan's answers to this are simply just laughable because they say that we need to talk about the political process. But A, we can talk about the political process minus the counterplan. B, we need to talk about political processes that are about the topic specifically, not about some stupid veto-cheato counterplan. Additionally, what did you want?
We can't defend the entirety of our F. We just get to defend this one thing, which they get to start the debate on.
Yeah, we can't defend the entirety of our plan. We just get this one thing to as the jumping off point for the LOC. Additionally, additionally that you should reject them because of the empty speeches are only way to get actual education, both depth and breadth. Means that they literally are stealing 15 minutes of offense from us running this position. Additionally, they have a false sense of depth because they are literally just talking generically about veto-cheato in general. It means that we're never getting education. So at the end of the day, you're going to be voting for women on this piece of paper because they are undermining education by stealing our ground. or fairness, and simultaneously undermining education because we are not talking about depth in the topic. We are talking about depth in some stupid, unrelated political topic that they could have done without the counter plan.
Oh, you didn't say anything about speaker points.
Oh shoot, I forgot. You should give them 26 fives.
And us 30s. I'm gonna shut this.
Oh, hey, my
Oh,
phone
no,
was
don't shut it. If you shut it, then it decides that it didn't want to record any of the video anyway.
Oh, really?
Yep. So none of the debate round